Hi, everybody. I'm Gloria Moraga. This is the Political Woman Podcast. Wanted to give you an update on what the heck is going on with Donald Trump and his desire to use the Alien Enemies Act. Donald Trump is trying to do a lot of things, and one of the things he's trying to do is deport immigrants without due process. He just wants to round people up and send them off. And there's a lot of stories going on right now, a lot of human stories about people being pulled out of their homes, off the streets, and thrown on this airplane and being sent to El Salvador. According to the Trump administration, they were pulling out members of a gang, pulling them out of America and sending them off. Well, a judge tried to stop them, and the plane kept going anyway. And so now they're in a prison down in El Salvador. And here's an update from the New York Times. Appeals court maintains the block on deportation flights under that War Powers Act. And I'll read a little bit. This is a quote from the New York Times article. An appeals court in Washington on Wednesday kept in place, for now, a block on the Trump administration's use of a rarely invoked wartime statute. And that statute is the Alien Enemies Act. And it's only been used 3 times during war, when the United States was at war. The War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. And now Trump is trying to say that there's an invasion, that we're under attack by members of this gang, or I think they want to just outright use it, blanket use of it, to deport any immigrants that they deem here illegally without any sort of due process. And if you're in this country, the way it used to be before the Trump administration, you were guaranteed due process under the law. So they sent these folks down to El Salvador. And since then, this whole thing's been caught up in the courts. Well, what happened the other day was the appeals court heard this case, and I want to play a couple of sound bites for you. Here's one.
There were plane loads of people. I mean, it's a class action. There were plane loads of people. There were no procedures in place to notify people. Nazis got better treatment under the Alien Enemy Act than has happened here, where the proclamation required the promulgation of regulations, and they had hearing boards before people were removed. And yet here there's nothing in there about hearing boards. There's no regulations, and nothing was adopted by the agency officials that were administering this. People weren't given notice. They weren't told where they were going. And they were given, those people on those planes on that Saturday had no opportunity to file habeas or any type of action to challenge the removal under the AEA. And like you've agreed that 2 of those airplanes, people were removed under the AEA. What's factually wrong about what I said?
Well, Your Honor, we certainly dispute the Nazi analogy.
Now, 2 of the judges on the appeals court really questioned Trump's Department of Justice attorneys and were not at all pleased with what's been going on. And here's another bite.
Because people don't go through a trial in this country without getting the gold standard of due process. And that was not happening here. I think that's a false equation. The problem here is that they are challenging implementation of the proclamation in a way that never gave anyone a chance to say, I'm not covered. And if your argument is he didn't have to do that, it's an intrusion on the president's war powers, the courts are paralyzed to do anything, then that's a misreading of precedent. It's a misreading of the text of the Alien Enemies Act. And that can't be an unlawful intrusion on the president's powers. It just can't. The president has to comply with the Constitution and laws like everybody else.
Now, one of the judges on the court, the judge appointed by Donald Trump during his first presidential time in office, he just said he thinks the case should be adjudicated or sent back to Texas, because that's where these planes were leaving for El Salvador from Texas. So there's that. Meantime, what the Trump administration wants to do is just get this case before the Supreme Court. And who knows? Who knows? There's kind of a wild card now with Amy Coney Barrett. She might vote against Trump, so we'll just have to wait and see. But I wanted to do a longer piece on this, a longer video, and show you what's happened down in that prison recently. We have the woman who murdered her puppy down there, Kristi Noem. So she's down, and it really is just, I don't know what the message was in this video. You know, when you produce videos, you know, when I was a young woman producing videos as a young news reporter, it's like, well, what's your message? What's your story? What's the story about? I don't know what Kristi Noem's message is. Going down to this prison and touring this prison and having men without their shirts on, you know, behind bars, and her standing there in front of the jail cells. Somebody, anybody, tell me, what is her point here? Why would she do this? About 261 people were deported, and in that plane ride, and 137 of them were deported under the Alien Enemies Act. So they're down there in this prison, and I'm just going to play the video of Kristi Noem. And it's one of the harshest prisons in the world. The facility has 8 sprawling pavilions that can hold up to 40,000 inmates. Each cell can fit 65 to 70 prisoners. Prisoners can't have visitors. There are no workshops, no educational programs. They're mostly just crammed into their cells and get very little time outside. They wear white uniforms, knee-length socks, t-shirts, and rubber clogs is how they're described. The judges are trying to get more information to get some of these people back. There are lawyers working for them from the ACLU trying to get them back. And now the Trump administration has invoked a state secrets pledge, refusing to give the judge any additional information about the deportation of Venezuelan migrants to El Salvador under the 18th century wartime law. And I'm reading late tonight so many people criticizing Kristi Noem for going down to this prison. When I was looking at the video, I could only think of what have we become in this country, that we are rounding people up and sending them down to this prison without, we don't even know who they are. And we know some of them, and we know some of them are just, one guy's a hairdresser. His story haunts me. You know, he was snatched up because he has tattoos, and it's like, wow, so that's it? That's the new criteria? You have a tattoo? It's not about immigration, my friends. And it's like, I read these polls, it's like people are very pleased with Trump on immigration. And I don't get it. I don't understand how you can be pleased that people are being rounded up without due process. And yes, I'll say it. The judge said it. The judge in this case, and they upheld the ban for Trump not being able to send people off. When the appeals court upheld the ban, one of the judges said, Nazis got better treatment than these people are getting now. And what have we become? And who else is next? If they're rounding these people up, we don't even know who they are. They're just going to round up Donald Trump's enemies? This whole scandal that's going on right now, They're not addressing how troops may have been put at risk or could be put at risk in the future. Now, the whole group chat scandal. And that's the concern. But no, they're just attacking members of the press. And that Marjorie Taylor Greene screaming at a member of the press today. So I digress. But I did want to share the Kristi Noem video. And I wanted to update you on what's going on with this case. And it's going to go to the Supreme Court. And then we'll see. We'll see what the Supreme Court does. We'll see if the majority of the members on the Supreme Court, we know there are 3 that are going to vote for Trump no matter what, because they are in the pockets of big business. They get paid. They're getting paid a lot of money to rule for Trump. But we'll see what the Chief Justice does and what, even though Trump thanked him, and we'll see what Barrett does. And if they're going to vote along with the sane judges on the court. So that's where we stand right now with the Alien Enemies Act, Donald Trump, migrants, rounding people up and sending them off to horrible prisons. Kristi Noem, the puppy killer, down there walking around with, her security detail, standing in front of prisoners. That's an update. I'm Gloria Moraga. Please subscribe.
Okay.